Let's just get a link out of here real quick. And we will paste this in chat. Various chats. Do this. And we'll do this. Okay. So, welcome everybody. So as the title of the video says in the description, I wanted to take kind of a look back at BleemSync. It's been about a year since I really put any sort of effort into it. So for those that don't know, BleemSync is the hacking application slash payload that you use on a PlayStation Classic in order to get custom games installed on it, specifically running off a USB flash drive, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The way it started was the PlayStation Classic was released in mid-December 2018. So basically, what happened was upon release, a bunch of people wanted to hack it. Basically, two groups of people, um, and we kind of knew some things about the hardware. We knew that eMMC was the storage medium chosen on the system versus NAND flash, which is an interesting choice. It ended up making the whole process easier. So when I first got my system, I decided to sacrifice. I bought two of them right away, both for $100. Uh, Yikes! And I ended up destroying one right away by taking off the eMMC flash chip. Uh, and I ended up using actually this reader here, which is a nice little ZIF socket style eMMC reader. You close it and it basically just uses a chip here and converts it from eMMC and reads it like an SD card and then goes out to USB, so it kind of works like a flash drive. So I desoldered it, and it would have been a day zero exploit, or not day zero, like a day one exploit, um, had I actually figured out how to dump the chip properly. I was trying to do it on Windows and it wasn't working, and um, I desoldered the chip and I tried putting in the reader, but I wasn't getting really good results on it for some reason. It was acting really slow. The first dunk took about 14 hours, which was really weird. Like it shouldn't take that long. So uh, I ended up redoing it and plugged into my Mac, the only like Unix machine that I have. Dumped it successfully, and then basically sent it off to a select number of people. Um, One of those people, we started taking a really good look at like the file system and um, how things were structured. I noticed pretty early on that like the menu was using this weird like database uh, based in SQLite, which is really easy to modify. And then we basically started disassembling it, made lists of files and where everything lives, and basically what ended up happening was Mad Monkey, who first figured out how to hack the NES and SNES Classic, um, basically found a routine in the system to uh, allow updates over USB drives, which was really cool. You had to label your drive Sony, and you had to uh, create a little payload and put it in a very specific folder name. And that payload basically was reverse engineered because I'm not sure on the specifics of it, but basically there was some encryption done on it, but the key for it existed on the system itself, or like it was really reverse engineered out of the payload, really easily reverse engineered out of the payload. So he basically ended up creating a script, and I think he sent it to me first. I want to say he sent it to me first, um, and I have another video somewhere on my channel if you want to take a look at it, and it's basically just me plugging in the flash drive, turning on the system, and the orange LED light blinks. And that's really important because that was like the first like Hello World style thing on it. So from there, I decided to take a deeper look at it. We knew where all the ROMs were, all the ISOs. We had kind of an idea um, of how the database was structured and how the menu was built. So we just did a deeper dive, and I asked MadMonkey to supply me with a modified version of the payload that would just run a shell script. And that's basically where BleemSync started. That was like the first birth. Um, so BleemSync technically wasn't the first hack on the market. Uh, there was another one called GPG Hacks that was done by Just Mako, uh, which was it was quick and dirty. We ended up discovering that it was probably pretty dangerous because it actually replaced the files on your system, and we didn't have a good routine for like doing backups yet. Um, and So after a while, after BleemSync started, I started writing some stuff in. I basically wrote a .NET Core application in C Sharp, and basically made a thing that could reproduce the menu database and overmounted the USB flash drive so you could run games directly off the flash drive. That was really cool. It was probably one of the most exciting times um, that I've had in the past couple of years. Being like first on the scene and doing this stuff was really fun, and working with everybody was really cool. Um, so I made this implementation with .NET, which I believe, if I remember correctly, I don't remember the first version. It might have run on PC. Uh, it, since it was written in .NET Core, eventually we took the command line version and put it so it ran on the system because you can do that with .NET Core. Um, that worked. I will admit that it was super slow. It kind of sucked. Um, and ran into a few problems with it, and it just overall wasn't a very good solution. Kind of alongside the whole BleemSync development was a feature I called BleemSync Central. It was basically a database where we were scraping PSX data center, stuffing into a database and giving it an API so we can pull information over HTTP requests through a REST API. Um, and we're able to get like info from the game. So that was kind of like a cool feature was, oh, you could just drag your ISO files on here. It would detect what game it was. It would pull the info for it. It would pull the cover, um, and it would pull the game info instead of like having to create the INI files that we had originally. So that was pretty fun. I think I think I added that pretty early on. I want to say that was like almost 0.4.1. Um, which was kind of the last version of the command line version. And that was probably early January, mid January that happened. And at that time, I decided to uh, create a user interface for the platform um, where you could upload games. It ended up not being well received, and I'll kind of go over why. Um, but I wanted to go into it because it's actually uh, I accomplished a lot of things that I wanted to accomplish um, with the UI. Um, it accomplished a lot of things. Whoa, I can't play that right now. Sorry, I didn't have chat pulled up, so I'm gonna. I was supposed to check that payrolls were signed, but the way it was implemented, it just checked if standard out of GPG contained the signee name, which happened even if the signature was invalid. Okay, so yeah, that answers that question. So uh, speaking to uh, BleemSync UI. BleemSync UI was because I am a .NET developer um, in my day-to-day job. I basically write ASP.NET core applications. ASP.NET is a ASP.NET MVC Core is a web application framework. Um, basically lets you create web applications, websites, whatever you want. I had this really cool idea for uh, creating kind of a cross-platform user interface that you didn't have to install on your computer. It would run on the system itself and over a USB OTG uh, connection. I don't know exactly. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. I honestly didn't think about doing this video today, so I didn't do any look back into how everything worked. RNDIS connection. Um, and basically, you would go to your web browser, you would put in either BleemSync.app or BleemSyncUI.com, which wasn't registered by me, but it went to the same place, so like no security issues or anything like that. And you could upload games to your system directly over your web browser, and it was kind of cool. It could do the same thing. It could scan your info. It grabbed the info from BleemSync UI. You could upload your own cover art. It was a little broken, the first version, which actually ended up being the last version, unfortunately. Um, it was really cool in that you could like set the date and upload your own info and change it on the fly, and you wouldn't have to mess around with INI files, and you didn't have to necessarily rely on the BleemSync INI files. Where it kind of fell down was performance. ASP.NET Core is not meant to be run on a PlayStation Classic. The small little ARM architecture, it's it's not meant to run on that. That's fully willing to admit now that that is not the ideal way of running things. So pretty quickly, I decided to start developing a desktop version. Um, Kind of the same concepts of using the same code running on your own computer, and it would be accessed through a web browser or through Electron or something like that. Um, Once I started developing that, I started releasing some videos and screenshots of what that would look like. Actually got some code working, and it works. It's out. It's there. The meat of it is there. It's not totally stable. There's some things, and it's not totally user friendly. There's some things that need to be done. It's very simplistic, but it was nonetheless pretty cool from my standpoint. Um, Now we get into kind of the muddy part of it. I was part of the MMC team, the Mod My Classic team, um, and I had to step away due to some things that came up in my personal life. Um, uh, which is eventually why the project kind of left my grasp. Um, but basically, what ended up happening was I was project lead on BleemSync, and uh, I had a certain vision for how things were going to go. Um, uh, I was probably a little crass with people. You know, people are giving their time to this thing on their own time. There were some great developers working on it. I don't think I caused anybody to leave except for one. That's a totally separate story that I don't need to get into. Um, but it wasn't a great idea for me to keep leading the project, especially when my time was split and I had to really reduce. I can only work on it like an hour a week. So I decided to tell my classic, this is your baby now. Um, do what you're going to do. There were some inklings that that wasn't going to be a good thing. There was a countdown timer that was introduced that I did not agree with and kind of showed up when I decided to take a weekend off. Um, and that was forced through. That whole situation has been dealt with, and uh, people learn. We've all learned from why with software releases you tend to underpromise than overpromise, especially when you're doing it for free. You just don't make any promises when you're doing it for free. That's software development. That's how it goes. Um, After BleemSync left my control, it was under some different management and it was under some good hands. And I am generally happy with how it is now. There are things that I would never do. Things like the boot menu, I think are um, I think they're ugly. I don't think they're very fun to look at. I think they kind of remove um, the stockness, the appeal that the system has itself. If we're going to just be injecting stuff of our own, why don't we just run Emulation Station? It's a better user interface. It supports more things. It has its own scraper built in. Why aren't we just supporting that? So uh, the stuff like the boot menu I didn't like. There was some writing to the file system that, while safe, I wondered if we needed to be doing it as a core functionality. Um, but again, I kind of stepped away from the project, so I didn't really give any input into that. Um, Alongside BleemSync, there was another project running called, or there is another project running called AutoBleem, which is, man, I forgot his name. I'm gonna have to Google it real quick. AutoBleem is being done by, um, da, 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 da. I'm sorry, dude. I am so sorry. Uh, oh, I feel bad. It's been like a year since I looked at this. Screamer, Screamer. I am sorry, dude. So basically, what he did is he took our original my original implementation of the command line and re-implemented it using C++. And he actually did a really great job with it. I generally like back then it felt super competitive because of how fast everybody was moving, but looking back at it, he did a great job. And what he ended up doing was basically like BleemSync can go and handle like web UI and replacing the kernel and everything like that. He said, I'm going to make the core implementation of let's add games into the system, and then he basically ended up rewriting the menu in C++. And he made something that works pretty damn well. I haven't tried it myself. I've only watched their videos, but it's really admirable about how well the application is built. Um, Something that I kind of want to revisit, and I'll talk about that. But so that's kind of the history of BleemSync. It went through a couple uh, version changes. There's been some drama recently with Mod My Classic, which I'm not going to get into. But basically, I am currently banned from the MMC Discord. Um, don't need to get on that. I hope to talk to the guys and get unbanned soon. Um, I have no affiliation with either side, if you know what I'm talking about. I will criticize either side equally, and I deserve criticism myself. So there are things that I have said in the past that I stick behind. There's some stuff in the past that I will retract, and I will own up to it. So if you have any issues with it, let me know. I'm trying not to be an asshole. I'm trying to just kind of have fun with the system. So that brings us to now, and I had basically told through because of how some members of MMC were conducting themselves. I basically said, okay, stop using the BleemSync name. I might want to pick it up. It's tied to me. I'm really proud of this. Um, I don't want negative fallout to be um, attributed to the project itself, um, and decided to just split it off. I talked to Swingflip, and he decided to, or we decided to basically split efforts, and while also keeping some features like BleemSync UI, and he can use all the code that they've written and all the code that I've written and everything like that. We're all fine with that. Um, Basically, just saying, okay, let's just step back. Um, and this is not me saying like BleemSync is going to come back in a full fashion. I want to play around with it and see how it's going to work. I want to look at it for uh, personal objectives, learning more about .NET Core, I've got a big project coming up for work, and I've not been working .NET Core as much as I should have, and I would like to kind of push the limits of what I can do. And then also looking at things like how Electron would integrate with it, or how um, if we were to have our own wrapper or something like that, how all that would work. So I've really been thinking about it lately, and making just kind of a general game manager, not just for the PlayStation Classic, but um, for the Raspberry Pi, even like stuff like that. Possibly the Genesis, possibly the SNES, NES. Um, Basically, what has come about is Hackchi has been a great program, and it's been serving its purpose, but it's kind of an aging thing. It's kind of becoming more than what it was. And I've been talking to Dan the Man 827 about possibly seeing if there's a way that we could integrate BleemSync. I never told him that I'd be making a video like this, so I wouldn't, put any money on it. It probably won't happen. Um, but it'd be something cool to do. So maybe we'll get into that type of stuff. Um, but okay, yeah. So V37 says Screamer. Axonar is doing the UI dev at the moment. Again, I haven't looked at it recently. Last time I looked at it was 6 months ago, and they were still doing a great job. So um, Autobeam guys, keep it up. You're doing a great job. Um, you put way more time into this than I possibly could have, and it's really admirable. Um, so I kind of want to. I'm going to take my little camera here. I'm going to stop talking. Oh, I can flip it. Look at that. I'm going to stop talking to you like directly, and kind of um, look at where BleemSync is at the moment. Um, So this is a repository. This is the changes that I've been putting through. Um, I've recently in January I took in a couple patches that people or a couple of pull requests people have put in just to kind of get there. Um, that kind of sparked my like, okay, there's been a couple submissions. They're not big fixes or anything like that, but maybe it's something we can revisit. Um, but there are some things in here. There's some development on BleemSync Central that we can. I might want to talk about that at a later time. But there are some things in here like basic implementation of upload queuing. So one of the things that BleemSync really kind of sucked at was you could only upload one game at a time, and it was really slow. And you couldn't do anything in the background. You couldn't queue anything up. You couldn't visit another page. It was really kind of a pain in the butt. And I don't even think it warned you if it was uploading something. It would just like you would visit another page and oh crap, your thing's canceled. Now your database is corrupted. Um, let's see what else has been worked on in this branch. I implemented a basic implementation of folders. I have no idea if that would work with the current implementation of BleemSync. I was working with Cyanic on it, and it was working pretty well, and it looked really cool. And I'll kind of show you how that would work. Um, Lazy content loading, so it doesn't block the DOM. Fixed some disk stuff. Fixed moving of folders. There's just a lot of stuff in here that I think has a lot of merit to it. So I have the project running right now. I'm actually going to restart it. And kind of show you where it's at in the current state of things. So if you notice, there's some features that are a little bit different. You can see we have an add folder button here. We have this whole node manager here, and we have this drop down. This drop down essentially lets us choose drives connected to the system. I have no idea if it updates on the fly. Um, doesn't look like it does, so I might have to stop and restart the project. And it might even crash, because who knows. Yeah, so you can kind of see that it will actually pull in other drives, and like I can switch the drive. Um, I can't switch back to the drive I was at though, which is interesting. Um, but it'll change, it'll like read the database from a different location, it will initialize the database. When you upload games, it'll actually go to that drive. I'm going to see if I can get this back to where it needs to be. So if we look at app settings, yeah, if we look at app settings here, this changed from S, or from G to S. We're going to change it back to G, and I'm going to restart the project. So there's certain things that are broken, like your USB drive might not be detected. Uh, it should actually, I think G should be showing up here and show you how much storage is left. I can sit here and I can add a folder of, I don't even know what Area 51 is. It's a light gun game. Light gun. Um, if I refresh the page, I don't have to hit save or anything. It's automatically created in the database. I can go in, drop Area 51 in there, and there it is. It's under that node, and you can kind of move things around. You can kind of sort things. I'll add a couple more games here. If I go to add a game, which this UI needs to be rebuilt. This is kind of ugly and it's kind of old. If I add, sorry, sorry, my mic cut out for a second. If I add this gunfighter game, hit open, it's going to find the info. I could drag a cover on there, replace it, give it a description if I want. I hit add game. It starts uploading it and it adds it to the queue. There's no queue management. I can't remove something from the queue. I can't cancel anything. Um, but I can go in and I can start adding other games. Open. It's going to grab the info. I can hit add. Now that's going to add it to the queue. So this will eventually upload, and it's currently copying it onto my drive. Um, Somewhere. I think eventually it moves over here, so we'll see that happen. Um, no, it'll copy it to the drive, and then it'll make a folder database too for when you. That's something with the UI implementation. Uh, so these are just some really cool features that I think I never really finished, and I'm wondering if I should keep working on it. Um, as far as I know, this is honestly the first time I've looked at the code in about a year. So um, I think the folder implementation really needs to be looked at again. Um, with that, I would even possibly look at kind of look at what BleemSync is doing and take the BleemSync payload and just kind of like reduce it down to the bare essentials. Not even introduce things like NTFS support or anything like that. Just what's the base implementation that we need to get folders working. And then just kind of use that as a hey, if you want to have your payload working with BleemSync, this is what you need to do. And then kind of leave that development up to other people because I don't have the time to worry about kernels and different core versions out there and stuff like that. Um, so I should have uploaded that game. Okay, yeah. So we see it here. It looks like it didn't actually go through with the queue. It just added the items to the queue, but it didn't keep uploading it. Which okay, that's whatever. This is very alpha hardware. Um, but if I make like a new folder, it should add a new node of hello. I mean, a new folder called for, and it's got the folder database in there. So like this was like almost there. The bug with the USB drive needs to be fixed. I think if you start the application and you have a wrong USB drive chosen, it yells at you. Like, I, it's rough, but I think even in the current state, if you it'll let you adjust like preferences and that type of thing, which is pretty neat for like BleemSync and stuff. Um, I think in its current state, if I were to just release this in like an Electron thing, which would be, I agree, like super heavy, um, we could possibly take it from there and look at, is there a way that we could run this as a web application in its own window, cross-platform? And yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of rambling at this point. I'm gonna go back and read chat real quick. But I don't know. And nothing's in chat, so whatever. So if you are watching this as a uh, non-live watcher, leave a comment below and um, let me know if you like are interested in this type of thing. Um, I don't have like a ton of time to spend on it. Um, and some things are coming up for work, but I might want to poke at it here and there. If you're interested and you're a .NET developer, or you can learn programming languages really easy, take a look at the code that's out there right now. The branch that I'm working currently is uh, feature bulk game uploading, um, which also has the folder support in it, and it's not merged in a way that really makes sense. But take a look at that thing. In order to get it working, um, you have to change the data source to not be specific to the implementation of on system PlayStation Classic. Same with the menu database here. Um, I will commit this code right now, so like this will work fine. Um, and you have to change a destination to a drive on your computer that actually will read properly. It's actually like plugged in. This fix that I wrote here actually, what it was doing was this drive info is I had to put this is ready in here because it was detecting my CD drive. My CD drive doesn't have a CD in it. Um, I don't know if that API would let me like write to a CD. That'd be kind of cool, but that's something totally different. But one of my things I think would be interesting to look at would be um, can we plug in the system? Can we plug in a BleemSync system? Can we plug in? I'm not going to say BleemSync system. BleemSync system. Can we plug in a system that implements RNDIS and read the games off of it and possibly upload as not choosing USB device but choosing an actual connected system, and then using that as a target, and then implementing the functions for uploading to that target. That's something that I would definitely talk to um, Dan the man about and see if we can get some sort of proof of concept working. Again, BleemSync started as kind of a PlayStation implementation. I don't think it's limited to that. Um, I don't think a well-built UI is limited to that. I don't think that a uh, uh, the BleemSync Central, a database of games, a very standard way of detecting a game and grabbing the info from it from a reliable community-driven database. I don't think that is um, out of the question. I don't think it's. I'm surprised it's not been done before. There's things out there like the GameDB um, and Screen Scraper, I think it's called. Uh, but those usually rely on um, like hard-coded IDs uh, from your system, or um, it relies on the title, and that's not good enough for a lot of games. A lot of games, you have the title of the ROM as something else. Um, if you look at a PlayStation file, um, not that I will be able to unless I actually remember how this works. PlayStation utilities. Oh, look at this. Do I remember this code? Parse for serial. Um, okay, let's set a breakpoint there. Let's add a game. Let's choose a bin file like this. Oh, because it spawns as this as a that's why. Central service, parse Q file, parse PB file. Ah, because that is an old version. So if I do this, choose a different game. So this parses out. In each of the disks, there is a serial embedded in it. Um, so basically, it goes through and loads um, the ISO into RAMs. It loads the ISO. It starts going through the ISO, chunks it into a buffer, and then just keeps going through that buffer until it finds anything starting with these codes. And then it basically finds that serial, and then it checks that serial up against uh, BleemSync Central. As Velocity 37, which I think is not V37 from Discord, um, as he points out in the chat, you can rsync something. Yep, that's over SSH. That's something that could definitely be done. But specifically with the serial parsing. Serial parsing is a bit sketchy due to edge cases. Early/launch releases and some demos use generic psx.exe names, and a couple games have typoed executable names that don't match the disk serial. And that is true. The way that BleemSync works is it actually goes through and parses the entire ISO as text. It doesn't try to browse the ISO 9660 like standard of file system to like find the psx.exe name. It doesn't do that, which is, I think, important because I did see in some edge cases where that didn't apply. What I would like to do is take a full ROM set and actually run that algorithm across everything and see how many times it can parse that out, and then kind of do a distinct on that and see how, um, if it's possible that that is actually more reliable than we think, and if it's only like 3 games. And then if like the serial doesn't work, you can always do a checksum of the disk. That's the fallback measure, and that's the same thing with Genesis games. Genesis games they have a serial embedded in them. It's not always in the same. It's not always in the same place. Might be at the end of the ROM, might be at the beginning of the ROM, um, but it always follows kind of the same format. And worst case scenario, you use the checksum of the file. With NES ROMs, you'll have to like split the program ROM and the graphics ROM and uh, checksum each of those individually. That's how those are done. I think there is a way that you could implement that database with BleemSync Central, and that'll be something for a different video. Um, but that's kind of all I really wanted to go over uh, for this video. And yes, I do have the whole set. I have the whole US set. I don't have the Japanese or European set, which is probably where it varies more, if it will. Um, but yeah, that's one thing about AutoBleem that they started doing is they not reverse engineer, but they implemented the ISO 9660 um, standard and basically read from the disk or read from the file system that exe file and then parsed it out. Mine's super hacky, but like it runs in JavaScript. It takes about 10 milliseconds, and um, it doesn't really use any RAM. It uses maybe like 2 megs of RAM at most. So I'm not really concerned with like the performance of it. Like the code is right here. The code is up on GitHub if you want to look at it. But um, and I just realized I'm also sharing my screen of the video. Um, but like it's super simple code. You just make a 32 kilobit buffer and then you just keep iterating through it and you're good. It's actually really cool that this works in JavaScript because this actually parses it out from it loads it in a worker, parses it out, and does it directly through your web browser instead of like talking back to like I think the way that the old BleemSync UI would work is, or at one point, you would upload the game to it, and then the web server, the web application would actually parse out the serial. So you had to wait till it uploaded before it like you could get the info for the game, which is kind of crappy. Um, so yeah, that's really all I kind of wanted to go over in this video. Kind of show you where BleemSync is at. Kind of go over the history of it. I think it's pretty interesting. Even if I were to like drop this project and never come back to it, I'm very proud of where it's at, especially this version, especially the newest iteration of the UI. There's some cool things that I didn't hear behind the scenes, um, where it can basically be implemented for practically any system. Um, it doesn't work in any other system, but it's super expandable, and you can like just kind of like add and replace modules and all that crap. Um, Basically, where I feel like the on-console UIs fall down and Hackshi falls down is just like user simplicity. And that's really something I wanted to accomplish with BleemSync UI. Um, I think while it's definitely early version, I think especially once you get into like this folder organization, I think that's very important. Especially when you start to talk about things like multi-console support. Um, the architecture for this application is very dynamic. You basically write an implementation for the PlayStation Classic that loads itself as a DLL. Maybe I can show that here in the files. C data. Oop, don't do that. Repository. Uh, BleemSync. BleemSync bin debug. .core. Blah 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 blah. So all of the PlayStation Classic stuff are just like three DLLs, and that creates the menu here, um, and that handles what happens with the game manager when you add a game. Basically, where it's uploaded to, how it formats the info into into a SQLite database, um, how it where it moves the files, what to name them, what folders to put them in, that type of thing. That's all handled on the PlayStation. You could write something for the NES and SNES that basically instead of doing a file copy, it would send it over an SSH connection via rsync or just SCP upload. Nothing stopping you from doing that. Or creating like a USB drive. Like there's so many options for how this could play out. Um, and then it's also extensible. Like the interface itself is extensible. It allows people to write their own. Um, let's take a look at a piece of code. I know I'm kind of going pretty long, but I don't really care. So you see that we have scrapers, services. I forget how this is structured exactly. BleemSync extensions. So BleemSync extensions is basically how you would implement another system, or you would write a new part of the UI to do something. Um, you could possibly even do like adding additional scrapers if the support was added for it. Basically, I've written 3 projects dealing with the PlayStation Classic that um, let's see, let's look at something. Game Manager Service. So this is an implementation of Game Manager Service, which when you add a disk or you add a game, it goes through here, um, and it might um, move the game in a certain place. It might convert it to a different format. You could do whatever you wanted, um, and then kind of creates the database. Um, the way that this works is with the UI is you have areas, PlayStation. Anybody that knows ASP.NET will be very familiar with this format. Um, basically like this settings portion here, these preferences are controllers. They're just a piece of C# code. You give it what area it exists under, what icon you want to give it, the name you want to give it, and you just keep this so it plays safely. And that's all you need to like add this menu item. This automatically gets added if the DLL is loaded in properly. And you can just drag a DLL into the folder. And there's different actions on here that you can execute. Like this whole menu thing is actually like pretty simple. It's less than 100 lines of code to add like these buttons, and um, like the interface is implemented through a CS/HTML file, but that's something totally different. So that's kind of an overview of kind of where I left the project. Um, it's pretty cool. It actually still works on multi-platform, so it will run on OS X. It'll run on Linux. Um, and I gotta say that it works pretty well. So again, I kind of want to take another look at it. I did a lot of design choices in it that I'm really happy with. Um, the core of it, it relies on a framework that is rapidly upgrading. It's called Xcore. It allows you to load in extensions and stuff like that. Um, and I don't know if I would necessarily update uh, the framework of it just yet. That'd be a huge undertaking, I think. What I'd really like is I'd like to get more developers on this. So if you just want to play around with it, if you have any questions, let me know. I'll paste a link to my Discord in the description. Um, and we can chat in the coding channel. You can hit me up on Rock the Classics. Hopefully, I'll be um, on my classic again at some point. Um, but yeah, if you have any questions about like the implementation or anything, let me know. Um, at the very least, if this ends up burning, crashing, and it just sits in my GitHub, I'll still be really proud of it. It's a nice piece of code, and it's really made some fun design choices with it. So um, that's really all I have for tonight. Um, as far as the other projects I'm working on, I will be looking at the PlayStation Classic again at some point for a hardware perspective, centering on new eMMC chips. I believe I have a system that's or a technique down pretty well. I need to get another system. I'm just kind of waiting till they go on sale for 20 bucks because I have 6 at this point and I have like 12 controllers and I really don't need more. So I'm trying to get them pretty cheap so I can, if I break it again, it's not a big deal. So that's all I have. I realize I'm streaming with the wrong uh, title on this thing. I'm still figuring YouTube out. I think their interface sucks for going live because I'm going through OBS and I changed the title, but it didn't change the title on it, so I'll have to go back and retroactively do that. Um, but yeah, thanks for watching and have a great day and game on.